All right, hello and welcome to the World Map Podcast. This is episode 9, coming to you live from the Washington, D.C. metro area. This Sunday, July 5th episode of the World Map Podcast, just after July 4th, Independence Day. So we're all coming off of those hot dog hangovers, and because you know we love meat on the World Map Podcast. And joining me from New York City, as usual, is my buddy Clark.
Good day, you all.
And back with us again after a little short break is Nick.
Hello.
We don't tell people where you are because you're hidden like in a mountain villain hideout somewhere, right? So we don't want to give it away. All right, so let's just get right into it. Let's talk a little bit about... Actually, before we get into what we've been playing this week, 4th of July happened, guys. I mean, I don't know. That's not really something that we would typically talk about on this show about gaming and technology, but that's a pretty big deal, right? You guys have a good 4th of July holiday weekend?
Indeed, I did, good sir. I actually went down to Bethesda in order to go on a bike trip around D.C.
Nice. How was that? How was that bike trip?
I don't know. It never happened.
Oh, too much rain.
Indeed, good sir.
Yeah. I was glad the rain cleared out in time to go down to the National Mall and see some amazing fireworks. We had a pretty good show down there last night. Nick, did you blow anything up this weekend?
I tried to blow up that bike trip, but it didn't happen either. I also went over towards Bethesda.
Man. See, this is what happens when you guys plan exercise, you know. You guys gotta scale back on the planning to exercise and just plan to eat more hot dogs on these holiday weekends. And
we had lots of meat. We had lots of meat.
Plenty.
We actually made like 8 pizzas or something, just homemade pizzas, which had an array of meat on them. But we were just chowing down pizza, wings, everything. Had some tacos this weekend. A little bit of everything, man. It was good stuff.
That sounds very American, almost as American as what we have been eating on the 4th of July.
Yes, and by the way, for those folks watching this show live this week, they getting a little taste of that all-American bow tie you got on there.
Indeed, good sir. It's funny, I actually wore this in some stupid-looking suspenders to work the other day, and some random lady on the subway surreptitiously took a photo of me, and for some reason, I guess I looked a little bit like a doofus. Or
I know, you're probably in the New York Times now. Have you checked?
I don't read that.
Fair enough. Well, you know, so I had a little bit of an issue though this weekend, guys, and it's really, really bothering me. And I debated whether or not to talk about it on the podcast, but I think I'm gonna talk about this. So over the weekend, this would have been Friday night, I got a call from my bank that my credit card was being put on hold because they noticed some weird unauthorized transactions. I actually got a voicemail from the bank telling me this because I didn't hear my phone ring, was doing 4th of July stuff with the family, whatnot. And I started looking at my credit card, through the account statement through the mobile app while I was waiting on hold to get back in touch with the bank. And I had, I don't know, it must have been, I guess it was 6 unauthorized Sony PlayStation PSN Store charges on my credit card. Yeah.
That never happens.
Well, exactly. So I'm glad that was your initial reaction, like, okay, so PSN not really known for having great security, and it was down the same morning. It was down Friday morning, so I'm like, oh, great. There was something in relation to this DDoS attack that brought it down, like somebody exfiltrated some passwords and hacked in or something. I don't think they've actually confirmed anything like that. I don't know how someone got a hold of my PSN password. It's a pretty good password, I feel like. Haven't shared it out or anything, but it was definitely my PSN account, because then I go into my email and I have those email receipts they send you thanking you for your PSN purchase, and it was tied to my PSN ID and everything. So literally someone figured out my PSN password, somehow got that information, logged in, spent about $300 on games, and obviously my bank shut the credit card down before they could go further than that. Whole thing's weird because these people like can't play those games that they downloaded to my account. Um,
So you
and
think?
well, yeah, so my bank actually told me, and I didn't know this, but this doesn't actually get reported as fraud because I did have my payment information on file with that vendor with PlayStation, so they can't file it as fraud. It's just actually you would dispute the claim, and then they would go to Sony and go to the vendor and dispute the claim to get the refunded amount. Um, so meanwhile, while I'm waiting for the bank to actually have their customer service line for that piece of business open tomorrow for me to be able to do that, I decided to get on Sony's live chat today and talk to them. Their phone number is closed on Sundays, but the live chat's open. And I had a horrible, horrible experience. I chatted with this guy, told him what happened. I said, look, the games that were downloaded, they're not even, like, it definitely wasn't me. Like, they're not even games I would play ever. They're, like, games that I hate. It was, like, GTA 5, Tetris Ultimate,
That's a great.
Little Big Planet, Project Cars. We just talked last week on the show how I don't even, like, how I hate racing games. Mortal Kombat X was one of them. I think we've even talked on the show about how I don't really like fighting games. It was kind of like the anti-me got a hold of my PSN and downloaded a bunch of games. Really weird. Of course, so Friday night I immediately changed my password. I added a PIN to my PSN account, which I didn't even know you could add a PIN. It's unfortunately not a default thing, but you can add a PIN number as well. Or that's a little redundant to say PIN number, but you can add a PIN and require that your password or PIN be input before any downloads are allowed to occur or purchases are allowed to happen. So that's not by default. Weird that I wish Sony had made that default. But I went and did all that stuff. I actually revoked that credit card and put a different credit card associated with my account. So I did everything that you would do to just like immediately cut that shit off and protect your account. And so it's all good. It's all fixed. It's just a matter of, hey, I would like to have these 6 games not on my account and have the $300 refunded to me. When I chatted with Sony today, basically they told me their policy is a strict no return policy on downloaded games, and if I dispute the charges with my bank, they will ban my PSN account.
What?
They will refund the money, but they will ban my PSN account.
So
My PSN account that has like 17 platinums on it, that I have tons of content associated with, that I've spent tons of money purposefully, with Sony on. So the first guy I chatted with just like rudely disconnected. He was basically like, I don't think I'm going to be able to help you. I'm going to disconnect this chat session. And then he did, even while I was like still trying to talk to him. I talked to a second person who recommended that I call Sony tomorrow when their customer service line's open for calls. So I'm hoping for a better resolution there, but I feel like Sony's holding me hostage a little bit and punishing me as a victim of this like theft basically, of my account, and saying, sure, we'll refund the money for the purchases you didn't actually make, but we're going to ban your account from PSN. And I feel like there has to be some way, some middle ground there. It's really weird. I mean, I haven't even started the download on any of these games. Like, they're literally things I'm not, like, trying to keep the games and also get my money back. Like, revoke the access to those games from my account, give me my money back, let me keep my account, everybody wins. And they're really being kind of anti-consumer about it, and it just kind of makes me sad because I've been pretty loyal to Sony for quite some time now. So really, really weird, frustrating scenario. I'll let you guys know how it turns out, and if I'm able to make any headway with them tomorrow, and I'll talk about it on next week's show.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. I knew the PSN was down Friday, but I didn't know that type of thing was happening. Do you know if that happened to anyone else? Or?
I honestly, I haven't seen reports of it. I was kind of tweeting about it a little bit, and I haven't seen anyone else say that, so it could be completely coincidental with PSN having been down and someone somehow have gotten access to my password. I still really am baffled at how the whole thing happened, and just even more so baffled, though, that they won't, like, fix my account and let me keep my account. I even asked, I said, okay, if you ban the account, is there some way I can like transfer my trophies and content that I've purchased before over to a new account? And they basically said, no, there's no process for that in place. So I've done some reading on some forums. There are people whose children have accidentally downloaded things and they've called Sony before and been able to get that content revoked and their money refunded, but it sounds like a very rare case. It sounds like Sony, for all the things that Sony's really good at from a customer standpoint, sounds like they have a pretty bad track record with fixing issues like this. So I'm hopeful that I'll be able to figure something out. I mean, even if they won't refund me the money, if they'll revoke the access to that content and just credit me that amount to spend on stuff I would actually want down the road and just like give me credit to my PSN wallet for that amount, I'm happy to let them keep the money because I'd spend it anyway at some point. But what's happening now is kind of unacceptable, so it sucks. We'll see how it turns out.
Dang. Yeah, I'm usually pretty paranoid of stuff like that happening, so I attach my card to the account in order to make purchases, and then after that I kind of take it off just in case, because ever since the thing, what was it, 2011, when the that big Sony hack happened, the PSN was down for like a month almost. So ever since then, I've kind of been very wary of leaving my financial information on their servers.
Yeah, I'm actually considering just buying PSN cards and just starting to load the amounts from those with the redemption codes onto my account or something in the near future because, yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like they're, it's one thing for them to not be able to keep their systems secure and to have like downtime and to get hacked and things like that pretty repeatedly. It seems like they haven't yet figured that out. But then it's another thing to blame the consumer when something happens to them and try to like kind of hold them ransom and say, sure, we'll give you your money back, but you should probably just let us keep the money if you want to keep your account.
Yeah. You probably can't even threaten a lawsuit so easily either because of the whole. I'm guessing you just clicked through that thing and it has an arbitration clause in their terms of service. So.
Well, and I'm sure, and their agreement also, it does say, that all PSN purchases are final, they're non-refundable. But it seems like there's a little bit of a gray area there when I wasn't the one who actually made the purchase.
Right.
So we'll see how it turns out. So we spent enough time on that on me ranting and raving about Sony, but I'm kind of furious.
Ranting and less raving.
Yeah, almost no raving, that's for sure. So we can dive right into what we've been playing this week. Nick, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So I've actually picked up a game. It's been out for a while, and I've heard nothing but great reviews on it. The Fire Emblem Awakening game for the Nintendo 3DS. I've never really played Fire Emblem games. I've never been a big fan of turn-based strategy. Clark will tell you I don't really play that type of game.
No, but he doesn't.
And when I do, I typically don't finish. There's been a select few, but somebody passed that game my way just to try it out. So I didn't actually put any money into it. And I'm telling you, it's a fantastic game. I kind of wish I would have bought it earlier when I had some of that game downtime when I wasn't really doing a lot to have a nice portable game on the 3DS to go, because the story seems pretty interesting. The voice acting and cutscenes are really nice, and the battle system except for the occasional random miss that you get from these RPGs, it's pretty solid, and you can pretty much make a good strategy for the battlefield. And of course the modes where you play on classic, where if somebody dies, they're dead for good, which I did not pick, not being a Fire Emblem veteran and borrowing the game.
Come on, man! I understand that there's like a weird level of difficulty there, and that can be frustrating. But I actually played XCOM that way, and it actually, believe it or not, makes the game so much more fun because you play the game differently, and you take less risks, and you really are more calculated when you have that turned on. And then if you do lose a character that is going to have permadeath, the impact that has as you're playing just feels so much more. It's kind of exciting in a way when you lose a character, even though it's frustrating and kind of makes you mad and sad all at the same time. It's just like
I haven't lost a character yet because I'm trying not to lose a character. But the reason I threw that on is because I only do have the game for a couple weeks, so I'm trying to just go through it And if I lose too many characters because I've not really played Fire Emblem games and it'll put me in a bind, I might not finish it before I have to return it. And I don't know if I want to buy it yet because I'm playing it. So I figured the time constraint, I might just through it. You guys give me these...
Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS is actually a game I've had on my Amazon wish list for ever. Like you said, I think it's been out at least a year, maybe 2 at this point. And the reason I wanted to play it is because it looks very much like Final Fantasy Tactics or something to me. Is it in that vein?
It's very similar to Tactics. It's got some new twists because Tactics, it's an old game, but it has the same general play style as Tactics all around. Like if you love Tactics, you'd be right at home with this game.
Nice. Sounds to me like I need to order this from Amazon before I go on vacation this year. I think that's my plan for vacation this year. I'm going to be going to the beach, and I think instead of hauling my console with me like I've done in previous years, I think I'm just going to buy a bunch of 3DS and Vita games and take with me to play at the beach. Yeah. So, Fire Emblem Awakening, nice. I love it. So, Nick, you've also been playing a little Elder Scrolls Online, I heard, and I am very interested to hear about this because I'm a huge Elder Scrolls fan. But I kind of passed on this game, and I feel like it's mostly just because I spent 80-plus hours in Skyrim, and there's just so much that I want to play. I felt like getting sucked back into Tamriel at this point was not in my best interest. So how's that working out?
All right, let's see. This game might get a little heat fire under this one. It's the first Elder Scrolls game I've ever played.
Wow.
Wow.
What a game to start with. And I wasn't gonna buy it, but I had excess money on my account, and I had a friend who kept hassling me to get it to play with him. So I figured, why not? I'll grab it. I hear nothing but good things about Elder Scrolls. And this is where my opinion might differ from somebody who is a huge Elder Scrolls fan. Because I have some friends that are big fans, and they kind of hate on the game a little bit for 2 reasons. One, because they've played Skyrim to death, and it's more or less Skyrim with more. And 2, the graphics...
So none of the less in the more or less, then.
I'm getting to the less. You got to give me the less. The graphics are far worse. It looks like it fits in mid-last generation. It does not look pretty.
Is that just because there are so many people who can be on screen at once? The resources in the processing are going somewhere else?
Well, I think it's a combination of that, and the world is huge. You've got all of Skyrim in there. You've got a large chunk of Morrowind. You've got other new areas, and the PvP area alone, if you were to run from one edge to the other, I think it took me like 2 hours or so just to run it because my PvP team that I joined for the campaign was terrible. So we owned none of the maps, so I could not fast travel anywhere. I ran it to get to this point. But I changed campaigns to one that was a little more active. It's been a bit more fun.
It's interesting to me that there's PvP in Elder Scrolls Online because I never got the feeling, as much as I love the Elder Scrolls games, they've never been responsive and twitchy enough for me to think that they would be good multiplayer competitive experiences. So is this different, or is it still like a little clunky when it comes to PvP?
It definitely feels a little clunky. That's my biggest complaint with the game. Is I like games where I feel like I'm attacking, like a hack and slash, something like that. And as you've played Elder Scrolls game, when you swing, it kind of just feels like you're swinging at air, and you hear sounds, and they're taking damage. It's still happening. So this game does allow you to throw it in the third person or first person, and for PvP, putting it in third person really makes it feel like you're attacking a bit more. But in terms of competitive, no, it's not tight enough to be real competitive. But the battles are so large that it's extremely entertaining to just go in like 50 versus like an underdog of 20, or sometimes battles of like 50-50, 60-ish. There can be tons of people on the map. There can be like battles all over the field, and you can just kind of warp to them once you've been to them. And so you just keep running in there and taking care of business. So it's entertaining, though competitive. I wouldn't quite go that far.
So what about like co-op questing? Because when I played Skyrim, the thing that I loved most about Skyrim was those moments where I would discover a tomb or a dungeon where I would kind of walk down underground and roll the big sepulcher away and walk in there and start dungeon crawling. And I always thought, like, when I'd get into some of those big throne rooms where things were attacking me, or I was trying to explore every little nook and cranny, I always felt a little. It was like a little creepy, some of those atmospheres, and a little lonely down there, right? And I always thought about Skyrim would have been the perfect game for just two-player co-op, kind of almost Halo style, where you've got that one other person going through the quest with you, and it just would have been great to have somebody to talk to down in their dungeon crawling, because Skyrim was really, for the most part, a slow-paced game. When you were dungeon crawling, you would come across really just a few enemies at a time to fight, and it was really more about, are you using the right combat methods and timing against the right types of enemies, more so than it was, here's a ton of enemies that you got to knock out at once. And so is there that co-op questing? Is there the ability to kind of pair up and do that?
Yeah, you can pair up and do co-op quests, and some of them, make more sense co-oping than others. Like some of these collect ones, you both co-op, and it counts for both of you. While there are other quests where you're co-oping, but yet if you talk to this guy, the other guy's got to run and talk to him too, even though you're in the same quest. It's really, that kind of annoys me a little bit. But in terms of your dungeons, it's kind of like a middle. What you're saying, there's just a few enemies, and you got to kind of like pick and choose what you want to do to try to, take care of the situation properly. In this one, there are a bit more than few enemies. There's each dungeon has 2 or so bosses typically, and a slew of little enemies just kind of running around. And some, you said lonely down there. Sometimes, and this is my problem with dungeons in this game, sometimes you go in and all the enemies are dead because some crew just came in and wiped the floor with it right before you got in there. Though they respawn quickly, they respawn extremely fast, but every now and then you walk in and things are just dead. You see like a group of like 8 running out, and that kind of gets me. But for the most part, I've been doing kind of a duo thing too. I've got one friend that basically plays it who's consistent. So me and him have kind of been jumping in there. And it's not as much, it's kind of turned strategic, but it's more just beat the crap out of everybody. So we've been going to more difficult dungeons to make it a bit more strategic. And there was this one dungeon we went to where I swear there was a boss in every room. There were like 9 down there. And the final boss was this huge robot guy who would kill us in like 2 or 3 hits. But he wasn't like so cheap that he would just immediately get to you and kill you. You could get around him. And there were all these little things that were popping up, killing him. And so you had to figure out how to coordinate to take out the little guys while keeping him down, while dodging him, and it was pretty fun. So I think the dungeons, in my opinion, should be limited to the amount of people that can be in at the same time. Like if you go in and there's already like 4 or so in there, it should take you to an empty dungeon. Because when there's too many, it's just kind of, you lose any fun down there. It's just kind of like, okay, I'm here, I grabbed what I needed, I'm gone. When there's just 2 or 3 down there, it gets really fun, and especially since the powers play off each other. My buddy there, he's some kind of like Dark Knight or something. He's got this super, because everybody has a super for their class, and each class has like 5 or 6 supers you can pick from. But his super, he stabs something in the ground, creates a ring that continuously damages people, but if he's joined up with somebody, me being his partner, I have the ability to play off of his super and shackle every enemy that's within that circle. So without me there, he just kind of puts something down that does a little bit of continuous damage. With me there, I can shackle all the enemies, keeping them in place. They can still attack, but they're stuck there. And I have a super that's similar. I'll drop something down, and when life gets low, because I'm kind of a ninja in the game, like a Nightblade, and when anybody in that circle that's on my team gets low enough, they'll instantly cloak and recover a portion of their health so they can get out of there in tight situations. So I like how some of the powers play off of having a team rather than soloing it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool, actually. I would actually highly recommend, if you're finding this a little bit fun, based on what you're saying and some things I've read about Elder Scrolls Online, I mean, it feels like a game that's good, not great. And so if you're liking it even a little bit at all, I would recommend going back and trying Skyrim when you get time, because I think you would absolutely love it. Our last question about Elder Scrolls Online: are there dragons?
I've heard there are dragons, though I have not had the time to level up enough and travel to find one. In the standard area, Stonefall, where you start out, which is a pretty big area. I haven't seen a single dragon, and the second area I've only half explored, and there's not been a dragon. But I've not been to the area of Skyfall, like Skyrim, not Skyfall. I'm not talking James Bond here. Skyrim. I've not been to those type of areas that they put in the game, because, like I said, it has all of Skyrim, from what I understand, in this game, along with a chunk of Morrowind and a bunch of other new areas. So I do hear there are dragons, and when you reach the max level cap, you actually restart level in kind of like a veteran leveling. So you start back leveling from 1, but you keep your level 50 stats, which I think 50 is the cap. And so about that, I hear from people on there and from some like things I've read that once you get to the veteran quests, that's when things get really fun, because things get more intense and you really have to play off teams rather than just kind of run in and run and gun and solo it.
Nice. Awesome. So, have you guys heard of this new game that's out? It's a couple of weeks old, called Her Story.
I have heard of it, but I've yet to play it.
So, Her Story is a lot of fun, and I will just, for the folks who are watching live this week, what I'm holding up right here with all this scribble and arrows and everything all over it, these are my notes that I took while I was playing Her Story. When is the last time that you played a video game that made you pull out pen and paper and actually start like writing and taking notes?
Wow.
I can't remember doing that in years.
Back in the Super Nintendo days, like the early 90s?
Yeah. So this game...
The original Zelda?
The original Zelda. Well, yeah.
Yeah, when you draw the maps.
Zelda 2, Death Mountain. You had to really...
Yeah. Or Mario RPG when you're in the forest following Geno.
Oh my gosh. By the way, they should put Geno in Smash.
Dude, they should put Geno in everything. I don't understand that one. He's one of the best Mario characters who has ever existed, and somehow he just disappeared out of existence.
No, I think Nick was a Mallow guy himself, but anyway.
Yeah, gosh, we don't talk about Mallow.
Mallow, he was the coolest non-tadpole there ever was. So... Her Story, actually, speaking of the 90s, it is set in the 90s. I think it's actually set in, I want to say 94 or something like that. And the premise of Her Story is that a man named Simon has been murdered. And
that's why there have been no Castlevania games.
It wasn't Simon Belmont. It was actually Simon Smith. And so they bring his wife in for questioning into the interrogation rooms. And maybe you guys have seen some screenshots and heard a few things about this game, but just to give you the rundown, you're essentially sitting at a computer terminal in the 90s, and you're looking at this desktop screen that looks just like Windows 3.1 or something like that. And they even put like a little screen glare on the screen. And it just looks so retro, but at the same time it's so real. Like you could really just be sitting down at one of those old computer screens. And I actually played this on PC. It's available on PC. It's also available on iOS. I think not only iPad, but also on iPhone. So I think just about anyone should be able to get access to this game and play it. It's really cheap. I got it on GOG, was the cheapest that I found it, and so that's where I bought it. And it was under $5. I think it was like $4.70 something on GOG. Well worth its price. They could have charged, I don't know, $10 or more for this game. And so you have access to this video footage library, and these are all of the recordings of every time that this woman was brought in for questioning around this case. And the videos were captured at different times. There are probably 6 to 8 separate times that she was interviewed for this case. And so what you'll notice as you're watching the videos is that the date stamp is different. She's wearing different clothes. In some of the videos, she might have a bruise. Different things. And so this is a full motion video game. Like this harkens back to the Night Trap days, right? Like this is... We don't see a lot of full motion video, like actual recorded acting, no computer animation. Nobody had ping pong balls on their face doing mocap. Like this is a straight up actress. I think her name is Viva Seifert or something like that. A real actress who was filmed reading scripts, like acting, right, on video. You're watching these tapes, And what you really have to start watching for is little tells, right? And they're not at all obvious. They're very subtle. Like you have to watch this game and play this game very closely, very much like you are just trying to be a detective, and you have to listen closely to what she's saying. What it all boils down to is this game is basically a search engine game. It is going to test your Googling skills because you have this database of videos, but to view them, you have to search something in the search box to look them up in the database. And so if you type in murder, you're going to get every video that she says the word murder in. It searches the transcripts. The thing is you only get the top 5 results for whatever you've searched. So if you search murder and there are 15 videos, you have to then, after you watch the top 5, start saying, okay, murder in the color blue. That's just an example. I don't think that's actually anything in there. But you have to start like pairing search terms to kind of narrow down because you're only going to get the top 5 results for whatever you search. So you have to start thinking about, if she mentions a name during one of the interviews, then you think to yourself, oh man, I haven't heard her talk about that person yet. That person might be critical to the case. So then you're going to search that person's name. You might search that person's name paired with the word dollhouse because you heard something about a dollhouse in one of the interviews. And so what you're trying to do is uncover this library of videos. There must be, I don't know, 50 plus videos, maybe even 100 videos in this game. You don't have to watch them all to solve the case. Basically what happens is once you have done your searching well enough to watch all of the videos that are kind of considered key to the case and have all the key information that you need, then this little chat window pops up and basically starts talking to you, and someone starts like chatting to you, and I won't spoil exactly what happens from there. But this game, like, you guys have got to play it. It's really, really good. It's not really your traditional game. You're really not doing anything gameplay-wise other than searching. It's like using Google. So if you're like an entry-level gamer and like this sounds cool to you, like don't be intimidated by it. You can get in and play this immediately. You're searching, you're watching video clips. They're not long. They're anywhere from like 5 seconds to maybe 2 minutes is probably the longest one. And you'll start doing what I did. You'll start scribbling on your piece of paper here and thinking like, oh, wait, so this person was here on this date, and this person did this, and you'll start writing down your theories on the paper, and you'll come up with 3 or 4 theories, and right when you think you've got it, you'll start questioning yourself, like, I don't know if that's what really happened or not. And so I was really just sucked into this game and played it for like 2 days straight. It was all I played because I wanted to get to the end and see what happened. It doesn't take long. If you're really good at figuring this stuff out, you could probably get to the ending in 2 hours, maybe. I think I probably spent 4 to 5 with this game. It's just amazing because we haven't had anything like this. It's a very different experience. I will say, although the concept is really cool, the acting is amazing and great. I loved everything about the game. The ending is left a little open to interpretation. It's a little ambiguous. Doesn't exactly come together in a way that I felt would have been satisfying. And so at the end, I was like on wikis, like trying to figure out what the ending meant. I was like trying to figure out if there was some other alternate ending, and I did something wrong. But I think basically what it all came down to was just the developer sort of leaves a little bit of thought in the back of your mind about like what really happened. But there are definitely a couple of really cool plot twists towards the end that will just make you be like, oh, okay. Probably doesn't take you long to figure out one of the things in the game. Like as soon as you realize what's actually happening, and that's all I'll say about it. It won't take you long to realize like, oh, that's what's going on here. Once that moment clicks for you, that's when you start like having all these weird theories. So, Her Story, available on PC and iOS platforms. Got it. I highly recommend it. I really had fun with it. I wouldn't want to play this type of game all the time, but just the fact that it does something different and it does it really, really well, it stands out. And the developer is the developer from had done like one of the Silent Hills games. So we got there's some street cred behind the developer here. But it's definitely like a great little indie title. So after her story, I think that means that we got to throw back to you guys and hear a little bit about your latest Splatoon adventures. I know there's been a lot of free DLC and things coming out. How is Splatoon shaping up? I've seen different video game media outlets actually do a second review on Splatoon because there's been so much new content come out.
Clark, I'll let you talk about your initial experience, and then I'll go into
All right.
depth a little more because I know a bit more than you.
Yeah. Well, this weekend was the first time I played Splatoon. I heard Nick talk about it already, and it sounded interesting. But the thing is everything you hear about it doesn't actually prepare you for how you'll feel when you're actually playing the game. Because when I started the game, I know, sure, yeah, you got to cover the ground with paint and everything. The focus isn't shooting the other guys. But then when you get there and you're holding the weapon, you're walking around, you instinctively think, I got to start killing the other guys, and that does not help you at all. And so you just have to rearrange how you think about playing these third-person shooter games. And that was kind of an interesting experience. And then I started playing, and there's a big paint roller, which is a weapon. Instead of a gun, you can just have a big paint roller, and so I'm just rolling around on the ground. And apparently, whenever you're swimming through the ink, you can hide in the ink of your color, and other people won't see you there. I didn't know that, and so I'm just rolling over, steamrolling over enemy players and just killing them, like, unnoticed. And so that was just I thought it was a very rewarding experience myself, and yeah, it's something that you should definitely try out at least once, just because it's completely different. Like you mentioned with her story, it's something different. In that game, it's a completely different experience and something different and done really well. It's a similar kind of game played very differently and also done really well. So, I mean, I think after gaming since like really the late 80s, it's kind of refreshing having these new experiences.
Totally agree. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Nick, there was something you said you wanted to go in depth about there on Splatoon.
Not too far in depth. I see Clark played my Splatoon, so he didn't really get into everything. And there has been, on the topic of new content, a bunch of it thrown at Splatoon. Like, I swear, every time I turn the game on, once or twice a week, it just, here's some new weapons, here's some new levels, and all this stuff. And at first, they started giving us weapons that were very, very similar to old weapons. Half the time, they were the same weapon. They just had different sub-weapons, like a different grenade or a different super, things like that. But recently, they've been giving new weapons that are completely different. Like, one of the new weapons was
The INZAP?
I think it's a grenade launcher, but it doesn't act as any type of grenade launcher you've ever seen. There's a grenade. It's basically a water balloon filled with ink. You just chuck it and it explodes. Well, there's a gun now that shoots those, but unlike a normal grenade launcher that launches a grenade, when it hits the ground, it'll blow up, or wait a second, it'll blow up. This one goes about 10 feet in front of you and just explodes in air. It never touches the ground. And so it's a very odd weapon, but they started giving new weapons such as that one, or snipers that actually, when you zoom in, it zooms in, rather than the old sniper kind of gave a line and a little charge meter, and then would shoot the distance. Some of the new ones, they zoom in when you get to the full charge, so you actually do get more distance out of them. So there's just new level of weapons, and then they've been giving a bunch of new levels too. But there's really been two new things added to Splatoon recently that feel like extra content in a way, not just here's an extra weapon or an extra little level, just here's some more stuff to make the game feel a little more in depth there. They've added a kind of a tournament scenario thing. They call it Splatfest, and you pick either this side or that side. For the U.S. and Japan, it was cats versus dogs. I think Europe was some other this versus that. And so you pick a side. And this is where I have a little bit of a complaint, because I know this. Yeah, Clark knows. It was cats versus dogs, and my brother was like, "I'll pick cats. Cats are awesome." So I chose cats, and played around. As you play the normal battle modes. You get this like T-shirt thing that has its own special perks on it that allows you to play these battle modes, and you play them. and as you win or lose, you gain points towards your team. Winning, of course, gives you a bunch more points, and you gain these ranks. And at the end of it, it takes all the wins and all the amount you gain in ranks and actually compares the two teams, which one won. Well, I logged in today because it's a 24-hour event. I logged in, it's like, all right, the population thing. What was it, Clark? Like
it was like
30% cats, 62 dogs?
Yeah, for the popularity, about 30-something% of the people chose to be on the Cats team, and 60-something chose the dogs. And so Nick saw that because I was there, and he was like, "Well, dang, we lost because dogs had a lot more people." And then the score actually pops up, and the Cats had a higher score. They got more points overall.
They got not more points. They got more what they call wins. So they won more of the games.
Yeah. So they won a lot more. The Cats did than the dogs, even though the dogs had more people. So Nick was stoked. Nick was really
out of context. This sounds like the most ridiculous conversation of all time.
But as Clark's saying, I was happy. I was like, yes, totally won. This is awesome. And then final results. Dogs win, basically 60-40 or something, some bull crap like that. Because apparently popularity takes a role in how well your team did, which is complete bull crap.
Yeah, basically, they took the amount of wins and multiplied that by 2, and then added the percentage of the population that chose that team, and that was your final score. And so even though the Cats had more wins, whenever they doubled that and added it to the percentage that actually played as that team, it was a smaller number overall.
It was crap. But it's cool they have little tournaments like that, but popularity should not play a role in a competition. It's stupid.
That reminds me of when I would be playing Mario Party, and I think it was 7 on the Wii.
Wow, that was a terrible game.
Yeah, and you would do everything right, and like win all these mini games and everything, and then you would get to the end, and you would have way more stars than your opponents, and it would be like, this person walked the most, this person lost the most shit, like this person was horrible. And it would give them stars for random things that were like basically for being bad at the game, and then make them win because they would have more stars at the end.
That's the feeling. That's the feeling I got.
But you got some great items.
I did. I got these stupid whatchamathings that do nothing for me. I don't care about those. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to mention about it, there's a new, I guess, kind of mode they gave out for free too. There's a new DLC mode coming out in August that's free, of course, that they've not released the details of how it's played. And I thought that was going to be the only other mode, but apparently when I turned it on, the stupid, I don't know if you've seen anything about the game, Josh, but when you turn it on, you got these 2 little squid people that just talk to you and tell you the news. You can't skip them, and they're terrible. But, I mean, it's such a minor complaint for how fun the actual multiplayer is that I don't care that much, but they're really annoying. But they do give it good information. And they told me there's like a new game mode where it's like a tower defense mode. You gotta like go to this, essentially King of the Hill in a way, from what I understand. I haven't got to play it yet because I just found out about it basically today. But I'm really interested. I'll probably mention it next week when I actually get to play it. But yeah, it's really nice to see. I can see why they're doing re-reviews of the game, because there is more content in it now than there was. And since it's being given out for free, it's not like they have to purchase it. It's relevant to everyone who actually owns the game.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So speaking of free content that's been coming out, Blizzard's been doing a little bit more with that as well. And I got sucked back into a couple of Blizzard games this week that I hadn't played in a while. One of which being Hearthstone, which I've talked about, before on and off. And it's the game that I have a lot of fun with. I think it's great. It's certainly the best card game-like thing that I've ever played. And it often feels like kind of pay to win and a little cheap when you start ranking up high enough, because people have all these boss cards that you just can't get if you haven't paid for more of the solo campaigns. But they did add this new Tavern Brawl mode into Hearthstone, which is pretty cool, which each week they give you some new random scenario and let you build a deck and go up against another player online and play within this scenario for prizes. And so that's pretty cool because you get like prizes such as new card decks and things more often that way. But also it just gives you like a little bit more of a level playing field, and it's really about how creative and skilled you can be with the scenario that they've thrown at you. So for example, one week it was that there were going to be bananas in your card deck, and so bananas would do things like give a character 2 extra HP, or maybe there'd be a rotten banana that was actually basically like 2 attack and take 2 HP from an enemy. And so these things would just randomly kind of appear in your deck and be drawn out throughout the course of the game, and you would have to decide how to use the bananas. This past week they had a spider mode where your deck would actually have spiders in it, and the spiders have various special properties to them that you can kind of figure out, how you want to play or not. Different characters interact with beasts and spiders and things in different ways, so you have to start thinking about which card do I play first if I'm going to play different cards in succession. So Tavern Brawl definitely has added a little bit of rejuvenation to Hearthstone and got me back into playing it some. It also helped that I was doing a lot of like sitting around this weekend not near my consoles and needed something to play, and Hearthstone's just a great iPhone version as well. And then I also fired up, my weekly Heroes of the Storm that I play. I try to get 1 or 2 matches in each week when the new free hero rotation comes in. But this week, the new Eternal Conflict expansion came out for Heroes of the Storm, which technically is free. It adds in some Diablo music. It adds in a few things like an in-game quest where there are these treasure goblins actually running around the map, and you can kill a treasure goblin and complete that quest to get more gold to spend on characters and things in the game. And they added a new character called the Butcher, who is a paid character. They're not letting anybody try the Butcher for free, at least yet. And if you've ever played a Diablo game, you know who the Butcher is. And then they added a new map, which is called the Battlefield of Eternity. Not necessarily my favorite map in Heroes of the Storm. In fact, I would say other than the mines, it's probably my least favorite, although I played like 3 rounds and I was only able to get served that map up once. That's the unfortunate thing with Heroes of the Storm is whatever map you get on, whatever battlefield you get, is just randomly assigned to you, so you have to just kind of keep trying when you're trying to play on a certain map, which is kind of frustrating. But the Battlefield of Eternity, essentially you have these 2 immortals who fight each other on the map, and you kind of go in, and so your heroes, who usually have minions, this map essentially turns your heroes into minions because there's a bigger hero on the map fighting against the enemy hero, and you're really in there like just trying to help your hero out. Whichever one survives kind of gets to press forward and take out towers and things and try to push against the enemy's base. So it's kind of fun. It adds some strange dynamics. It becomes less about pushing the various lanes like you typically have in a MOBA, and more about like really everybody consolidating in the middle of the battlefield, and so there are more hero battles happening. There's more of just a constant battle than the more strategic like lane pushes and people going off and doing objectives and things like you have on some of the other maps. The Butcher, however, even though I didn't get to play the Butcher, any match I was in with the Butcher, that character would have way more kills and way fewer deaths than anyone I typically see when I look at the stats at the end of a Heroes of the Storm game. I think they're probably going to end up having to balance the Butcher a little bit. He seems slightly overpowered right now, based on what I'm seeing statistically at the end of matches. So that's the Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm new content. Clark, before we move on from what we've been playing this week, I know you've been back into Smash, of course. Any new content or anything out there? I mean, I thought you finished all the challenges and would have moved on by now.
There's this one challenge that's been cursing me for weeks, beating level 9 without dying even once, without losing a life, and I just can't do it. And so I thought, okay, I'll do this in co-op, which seems like it might be a little bit harder because you have to fight more things along the way, but you don't have to. The final boss is a bit different and actually a little easier on co-op. And so this weekend, whenever I went down to Bethesda, I met up with Nick, and we tried getting that together, and along with our brother. We kind of rotated around, and we just couldn't do it. No matter how we customized the characters, no matter what we did, like we'd get really close, and then we'd be at the final form of the final boss, and then all of a sudden just lose a life, and it was just so frustrating. And I don't know if you get this way, but me, after I spend hours trying to do the same thing in a game over and over, like maybe about an hour or so in, I'll peak and I'll be really good and focused, but then after that it just keeps getting worse as time goes on. And that's pretty much how it was this weekend. So it's yet to be complete, and so...
I think the most frustrating parts, too, Clark, was when me and Keith and I, we were rocking all the way until like the next to last fight where the boss was, and he died. But we
accidentally, he killed himself.
Yeah, he killed himself, and then we wanted to see how well our team would do against the boss, and we didn't die at all. We destroyed the main boss, and so it was super depressing because we would have had it if he didn't accidentally kill himself.
That's why he's the one brother who hasn't been on this show yet. He's got to get his skills up.
I know, right? Yeah. Well, he has a lot of Xbox stuff to talk about if we ever do get him on. But
yeah, for sure.
We also played some, 2v2 online against just random people. And for some reason, actually, the time we were playing, we were just getting a lot of players from Japan, actually. And
that probably didn't bode well.
No. The funny part...
Before the game starts.
The funny part was when Nick was playing, he was playing with our brother Keith, and because you can't communicate with the other team because it's a Nintendo game. Spoiler, by the way. So the way they communicate with the other team is you can actually name your character. So they would just put little messages in the names, and they were getting really cocky and doing real well, and so they had in their names just try to win one. Because they kept beating the other team, and they went against this other team that just decimated them. And then it's like, we won one. And they just kept changing their names to say the amount they've beaten them the entire time.
Old CK. I'm never going to forget the name CK. That guy was a monster. We beat him one time, though, and we changed our names to, we got one, that's fine with me.
Nice. Awesome. So I guess we can move on then from what we've been playing this week, and I previewed last week, and we still have coming up that we're going to be talking about our top 10 video game lists of all time. I think probably given all the time it takes to talk about what we've been playing this week and all the news that's always happening in gaming, I feel like those are probably going to have to be some kind of bonus episodes where we just do an episode for each of us and go through our top 10 lists. So those are coming. We're working on those. I actually was putting mine together today, and since the last time that I updated my top 10 list, I'm very surprised at some things that have shaken out completely and how some things have moved around a little bit. One spoiler for that is there is no longer a Halo game in my top 10 list.
What? Well,
is it something that happened last week? Because I don't know if this list...
Yeah, if you appear for the show, you're on the website. One would think that you were going to be here, but
Hey.
Well, he's probably watching Netflix.
It's probably either that or that old live action Ninja Turtles show because he's such a big fan of Venus.
Well, if we're throwing spoilers around, mine's going to be full of nostalgia. My top 10 list.
Of course, yeah.
It's going to be about half. Probably a third from each major generation.
Yeah, I'm excited to see these and talk about these. I think we'll have very different lists, but also probably have a little crossover.
We're going to have a little bit of honorable mentions because I'm sure there's going to be some.
I have an honorable mention because there's one game that just doesn't cross over, but I just feel like I can't leave it out. So yeah, we'll get there. All right, so I just want to remind any listeners who are watching live that if they're watching the live Google Hangout, they can always participate in the Q&A and submit stuff for us to respond to. But for now, we're going to move on to let the news motorcycle come in and drop off some news for us. So first up in news this week is it looks like Reddit. They just celebrated their 10th anniversary, and there's this kind of protest going on over at Reddit right now. They fired the Ask Me Anything coordinator, this woman, and then a bunch of the Reddit moderators got pissed off about it and started like making all their groups go private, including the games subreddit. And so all these subreddits have gone completely private and are locked down, and Reddit moderators are in protest because they didn't like the CEO fired this woman. I go to Reddit like when I'm really really bored, but other than that, I am not much of a Reddit guy. I feel like you get sucked into this forums black hole that I just don't have time for most of the time. But why? I don't know. I mean, I don't really get this whole thing. Do you guys?
Not so much, but I found that it seems that ever since, well, for the past few years, people will do just about anything to sign some kind of petition, whine, and protest on the internet, no matter what the subject is. And I don't really know about what it is exactly.
Yeah, it does seem
It's,
that way. And at first I thought it was
getting
like one of those
desensitized.
Gamergate things where, like, oh, she was a female and she got fired, and maybe it was like a sexism thing, and people were kind of protesting that. But then I found out the CEO of Reddit, I think, is also a woman who fired her, that they're
Yeah.
like petitioning to get fired. So I don't know what's going on there. There's probably some backstory that, like, if you're a Reddit community person, like super user, that maybe you know about, but at the same time, this just feels a little weird. Corporations can hire and fire whoever they want for the most part. I mean, there's obviously some limitations there, but it's at will. So, I don't know. It's kind of strange, but I thought I would mention it just to see if you guys are Reddit users and this is something you care about.
I'm probably a little too old for Reddit. I wasn't born in like the late 90s.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think we're more like 4chan guys, right? Awesome. Well, also something that has been going on for about 6.5 years that ended this week, and this one's not coming back. Club Nintendo officially died this week. It's gone. So I don't know. Should we have a moment of silence for Club Nintendo?
Maybe if the Club Nintendo rewards were as good as they started out as a few years ago.
Yeah. I always put my codes in and like would just sit on points, like waiting for there to be something good to spend them on. And I kept thinking like, and there would be like that one thing that was good, but it was always out of stock or something. Like I think there was some Yoshi poster or something that I kept waiting to come back in stock, and it just never did. So I don't know. I ended up whenever they announced that it was going to be closing and you needed to spend your points up. That's when I started downloading a bunch of old Game Boy Advance games on my 3DS, and yeah, that's great to have that. But I kind of always wish that, yeah, I agree with you. The awards had been like better physical reward kind of swag. So I hope that whatever they launch next takes that into account.
I don't know. I was pretty excited for one reward I got with my leftover points. Got this super sweet 3DS Zelda case. It's got a bunch of sweet little Zelda, classic 8-bit Zelda items and crap.
Nice.
It's probably the nicest thing they had on there going out.
Yeah. I remember back when they opened, because I've been using Club Nintendo since like 2009, I think, and I got a little pack of those traditional Japanese Hanafuda cards, but instead of the characters that were typically drawn on them, they're Nintendo characters, which was really interesting. And I got like an actual statue of Bowser along with Mario and all those other characters, Mario hat, and just like a lot of really cool rewards, a few years ago. And then as time went on, just
Yeah,
they started getting worse, and then it's like, oh, now we have download games, you know. And then at first, the games that they give you to download were pretty good, you know, games I really wanted to play, like, you know, classic Zelda games and such. And then all of a sudden, they started putting like Urban Champion on there every week, and I'm thinking,
Grill off with Ultra Hand.
yeah. So no, I'm kind of hoping that they get something that has some great rewards and also is a lot more integrated with the Nintendo network, so that you can maybe hopefully transfer purchases and such.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, I wouldn't say that Club Nintendo necessarily was a failure. I'm not sure, they haven't really explained the story behind why they're killing it, and then they have said they're gonna bring something else as a loyalty program back in. Why they didn't just tweak Club Nintendo and keep it open, they haven't really talked about. But Miyamoto did an interesting interview this week. Shigeru Miyamoto, who was kind of the father of Mario and a lot of the great first-party Nintendo IP that we know, he did an interesting interview this week talking about the Wii U's failure. And despite the fact that the Wii U has become a pretty solid console and has a lot of great games on it now, sales-wise and launch-wise, and we talked about you still can't even do cross-game chat for the most part on Wii U. There are a lot of things about the Wii U when you roll them all together. Despite all the good things about it, it's a failure. Like, it's just been a complete failure from a business standpoint. And Miyamoto came right out and said that in an interview this week. But he kind of blamed it on being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Essentially what he said was that Nintendo had the idea for this console that had a tablet screen in the middle of the controller, and at the time that they conceived it, it was a really innovative, cool idea. But then by the time the Wii U released, the tablet market had exploded in the U.S. By the time they finished all their R&D and got this thing out on the market, there were tablets that were just so much more impressive than the Wii U gamepad. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that gamepad even has multi-touch ability, right? So, there are things that even some of the cheaper tablets on the market can do that tablet can't do, and I never really thought it was especially pretty either, the screen, and obviously a lot of that's to reduce cost, but at the end of the day, the Wii U was kind of a weird product, but I think Miyamoto is kind of placing the blame on not really what the issue was here, which to me is more that the Wii U, when it first came out, was like a desert, and there just weren't a lot of games on it, and they marketed it horribly.
That is what I think the biggest problem was, the marketing.
It was awful. If they would have marketed the Wii U,
starting with the name, right?
Well, if they would have marketed the Wii U like they did Splatoon, which arguably is one of their best marketed, piece of software, everybody knew what it was, knew what it was going to be, knew what was going on. The Wii U, I still meet people that just think it's a controller for your Wii.
Yeah, and then also in terms of their marketing, the controller, it looks like a tablet with some buttons on it, and they did nothing to make people think, oh, it's not a tablet. But if you actually hold it in your hands, it's a lot more like it's more like a Dreamcast controller with a really big VMU screen, or it's almost like holding a Game Gear or a Game Boy Advance. It's it feels like a controller. It does not feel like a tablet.
And a lot of people
it looks like a tablet. And so
the way it was marketed, people associated it with tablets when it's in reality nothing.
Well, and Miyamoto is still associating it with tablets, which is so weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they wanted some tablet-like functionality from it. I've never seen such functionality. But it's I don't know. It's just the marketing baffled me. I was so annoyed by it.
It's amazing how much a name can really mess you up, because I feel like even if you named it the Wii 2, it would have performed considerably different. Wii U, I think, was just confusing from the get-go. And the fact that a lot of the Wii components, like the remotes and things like that, are compatible with it, even though that's good for the consumer, in a way, it kind of really hurt them because it's just another thing contributing to what is this console? If I
Yeah.
can use all this stuff with it, do I really want to upgrade and pay money
Well,
for this other thing?
I mean, well, do you remember when we were kids, you know, in Nintendo's commercials, it's like, now you're playing with power, superpower. They show off the games, and they say, this is what you need to play these games. And when they were marketing the Wii U, it's like, oh, look at this family. Let's not show any gameplay. Let's just show a few people in the room smiling. And, you
Yeah,
know,
well, because
holding
that's the
this.
other issue. When the Wii U launched, there really weren't any games for it
You know,
for a year plus, and now that it has a great library,
yeah.
but it just took them so long. It's almost like, and I actually saw that the next Metroid game might
Uh-huh.
actually come out on the NX,
Yeah.
which means, and I also saw that NX could release as early as 2017, which to me, we know we're not getting Zelda this year. We know we're not getting Zelda until 2016. So if we're getting the NX in 2017, that means it took Nintendo yet again
Yeah.
until the end of the console cycle to develop the one game that everybody wants to play on their systems.
Which,
And it's like a Twilight Princess situation all
if
over again. They're probably like, are they going to do that whole weird like release it on the old platform and the new platform again? And
I don't
like,
know.
to me, that doesn't count as developing a Zelda game for the Wii U. To me, that counts as you
They,
developed a Zelda game for the NX, and
In
you're
an
checking a
interview,
box that there's one on the Wii U.
in an interview, they did say that they are not developing the game for the NX. It is going to be a Wii U game.
if we're
We'll see how
talking
that turns
about
out.
we're talking about rumors and stuff now. Another thing that has been said is that they don't plan on having the NX compete directly against the Xbox One and PS4 on a power level.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what does that
and that's
mean?
another thing that killed them, right? Was they came out so much earlier in this console generation than Xbox One
Well,
and what they when they came out, they said we now have the most powerful system in the market. We're more powerful than Xbox 360 and PS3. That lasted like a year, and then all of a
yeah.
sudden they're the weakest console
Well, here's
on
the
the
funny
market.
thing in terms of what you meant. Going back a little bit about what you meant, how during the first year they had no games really. This is why I really greatly think it has a lot to do with their marketing. The PS4 also during that first year, the Xbox One during that first year had practically no games either.
True. Yeah,
But they
absolutely.
had way more sales. People were buying it. Why? I mean, not because they just like think it looks pretty on their shelf, you know, even though there wasn't really anything to play. It's because they had great marketing campaigns. Well, except for Microsoft initially, but you know they fixed that one.
Right. Well, and part of that is that they also pay attention to third parties, and so that's the other thing that has really hurt the Wii U is, it used to be back in the day, it was like this game is releasing for Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony platforms. And every third-party game came out on all three, and you might have a version that's slightly different or slightly prettier on one than the other, but for the most part, you were getting the same game. Then starting with the original Wii, the Nintendo version would be watered down because
Yeah.
graphically it couldn't do what the 360 and the PS3 could do. And you started getting to the point, too, where it was actually even a completely different game in some cases.
Yeah.
And then enter the Wii U, and they just abandoned third parties altogether, or maybe third parties have abandoned them. Because
Yeah, I'd
it's
say
not,
that
not
one's
worth,
more accurate.
yeah, not worth their time to develop for that.
Yeah.
So now you have this situation where it's like, Call of Duty comes out, or Elder Scrolls Online comes out, or all these great third-party games come out, and it's like, get it on Xbox One or PS4, and Nintendo's like not even mentioned. It's like they're not even there. And,
Well, here's another thing, another issue with, in my opinion, the development of the Wii U. The PS4 and the Xbox One, very similar architecture. Now, Nick, you've had programming classes, and you know a bit more about it than me, but I mean, both of those two systems are Intel systems, running on x86 architecture. It's not going to be too terribly difficult
to port it from one to the other.
Port it from one to another, and with the ballooning costs of game development, it's a lot more risky to sync development costs, building the code for an entirely different platform with the custom chip Nintendo is using in their system. And I don't, if they were, even though if it were the same amount of power in that box, but they were using an Intel chip, I think they actually would have a lot more third-party games in there, just, maybe watered down graphically and such. But because they decided to go whole custom route with their chip, that's just tons of extra development money that third-party developers don't want to risk on something that's not going to get them a return.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've seen that before with older systems like what was that Sega system that had like 6 processors or something in it, where it was like an older one. Like there's always a system or these systems that have a completely different architecture that don't sell as well, and as we know, the Wii U's not selling as well. So it's not financially viable to actually sync build the same game from the ground up when you already have it for something that may or may not sell. I mean, I think Ubisoft did it with the Assassin's Creed game. And then I think after Assassin's Creed 3, they said they're pretty much dropping support on the Wii U altogether. But yeah, they had to rebuild a large chunk of that game because they couldn't just port it over from, the old systems or from the.
That reminds me, like when the Wii U came out, that the whole launch library that they were touting were a bunch of games up-resed that were available already on the other platforms. Yeah. I think Arkham City might have been one of the big launch games that Nintendo was playing up, and it's like, okay, yeah, I beat that game months ago.
That was better on the Wii U. But yes, I do agree.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have as much of a problem with that because, in my opinion, a lot of people that were buying the Wii U, at least initially during the first few months, were not necessarily people that would have had the PS3 or Xbox 360. So it may very well be the first time they played those games, But considering the fact that those games didn't sell well, like you said, I wouldn't blame Nintendo for those ones. I'd blame the third-party developers for porting those games and then releasing them months early on the other systems, and then wondering, oh, why are we not getting any sales? It's like, well, gee, you already released that game months ago.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And then using that as justification for not building further games. But
go ahead.
I was going to say, when I first got the Wii U, I did get a third-party game to start out with. I actually got Zombie U because it looked like the only game that utilized the controller in a way that...
And still to this day is the only game until Star Fox comes out.
Exactly. And you know what? That game was scary. The graphics were not the best, but you did play differently. You didn't pause the game to go through your inventory. You had to go through your inventory real time, and you're looking at the controller, because it's like you're looking in a bag, so you can't look at the screen. It's like, is a zombie coming to attack me? I don't know. I got to look away from my inventory. Oh, they are. Holy crap. I can't pause it to change my weapon. I have to manually do all this stuff. And it built a lot of tension, which was really cool. And that was a launch game, and there's been no other game since, that really had that.
That game messed up a few things too. I feel like that game could have been so much more.
Yeah, but again, it's a launch game, and Ubisoft probably didn't want to sink so much money into a new Nintendo system, which I don't blame them. But
so. Well, this whole thing could have possibly been avoided if Nintendo and Sony hadn't broken up back in the day, back in the 90s.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you heard the recent news about that, right?
Well, yeah, and I've always known the story that the PlayStation was born out of a Nintendo-Sony partnership where what we know as the Super Nintendo Entertainment System was going to have a CD-ROM drive in it. It was going to be what we know as the PS1, essentially. And some last-minute shit went down, and Sony and Nintendo parted ways, and lo and behold, Sony went and created PlayStation 1.
You make it sound like they parted ways out of happiness.
Oh, no. You know what?
No, they parted ways bitterly. Let's emphasize that. It was not pretty.
If we just parted ways, the PlayStation would never exist. It's how it happened. For those of you a little too young to know, basically, Sony announced their partnership with Nintendo. I think it was at the. I don't know if E3 existed yet. It may have been.
I think it was E3. Yeah.
Yeah, it was either that or the Consumer Electronics Show. But Sony announced, that they're working in this partnership with Nintendo, going to create a CD CD-ROM add-on to play games and stuff. The next day, Nintendo says, we're doing that with Philips.
But Nintendo did not like that Sony. If you look at this console that turned up in the wild here, if you look at it, it is riddled with the word Sony.
And so,
and so that's the whole reason we bring this up for those who haven't seen that news this week. Is the son of a former, I think, Sony executive uncovered the lost prototype of the Sony PlayStation Super Nintendo, and it looks just like a Super Nintendo with a CD drive in the side of it, and it has Sony all over it, like Nick said.
yeah, and the funny thing was Sony was going to retain all of the licensing rights and such for the disc-based games, and that's why Nintendo jumped ship at the last minute. Apparently, I guess they weren't reading their contracts or something, I don't know. But yeah, if they would have just... because up until then, Sony and Nintendo were good buddies. They made the sound chip inside of the Super Nintendo and, other things. So, yeah, this really wouldn't have been happening if Nintendo just, let us have our CD games back in the 90s.
Changed, really, this one event changed the course of history, and that sounds dramatic, but in terms of global economy, the situation we live in the technology market would be very, very different had this played out differently than how it did.
I'm going to tell you about this news real quick. I'm not really happy to see this thing turn up in the wild. Because I am a collector of Super Nintendo games, consoles, the equipment that comes with it, and I know I will never get to lay my hands on that. And I would have rather it stayed legend to where I'd be like, all right, there's no way I can get this. It's not real. But now that it exists, it's kind of like Clark and his Nintendo World Championship.
Dang it, Nick.
Always tasted. He'll never get it, but he knows it's there, so he could for his collection. Just like I know this thing is there.
I bid on it once. I bid on one of the gray Nintendo World Championship cart and got outbid on that, and I've never seen one again like that was within my price range.
So there's another Kickstarter out. I think you guys are excited about.
Oh, indeed.
Oh, yes. I'm pretty excited about this one. Being a Mega Man fan, and I'm really excited for Mighty Number 9 being the spiritual successor to Mega Man since, Capcom stopped loving him years ago. I always mispronounce his name. Inafune decided to open a Kickstarter up for a game he's calling Red Ash, which the name doesn't really give away what it really is. You really need to read about it and watch the trailer.
When I hear that, I think of Pokemon. So
they're calling it the spiritual successor to Mega Man Legends, and in the trailer, it speaks of this legend, this open world, and all this other stuff, and it actually pokes like fun, and it takes little stabs at Capcom for how they canceled Legends 3. If you pay attention, it references that kind of thing, and of course, to even push it further, they're calling it an open world action RPG, which is what Legends was. The main characters are Beck and Call, which are, who are the main characters in Mighty Number 9, which is basically Mega Man. So all signs point to it being the next Mega Man Legends, the game we wanted as a Mega Man fan that Capcom decided to throw out the window. And so I'm getting pretty excited about it. Within a day, it's already raised over a fourth of what it wants to build it, and it's only been about a day.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
I don't know if you guys have read about it. But
I have read about it a little bit, and I'm never going to turn down Mega Man. I mean, I'm not the biggest Mega Man fan in the world. Probably some of the earlier Mega Man X games are probably my favorite. But hey, give me anything Inafune does. He's never really made a bad game per se. So let's do it. Awesome. So I guess we can move on then and talk a little bit about non-gaming stuff that's been going on this week. And we mentioned at the top of the show about 4th of July and fireworks. I saw some great fireworks actually in Washington, D.C. My first time actually going, even though I've lived here a while, actually going downtown and seeing the real National Mall fireworks. Great show, probably the best fireworks show I've ever seen. Probably not dog's favorite night. So maybe last night was the night that cats win. And I mentioned too, I think on last week's show that I'm going to be rewatching the Star Wars movies leading up to Episode Seven's release, and I think we debated a little bit about where to start watching those, and I did start at Episode One.
Good man, A New Hope.
I don't know. I don't know. Josh seems like the kind of guy that would like Jar Jar. You know, he likes that Star Wars Disney Infinity, right? Weren't you excited about that? like in Jar Jar, starting with him.
Dude, you know what, that movie is just ruined by Jar Jar. But going back and watching it again, he's not the only thing. I mean, I never really cared for the pod racing scene either, but
But it made a
also
great game.
it was a horrible game. Was it in '64, right?
I thought that game was awesome.
Are you serious?
Arcade. In the arcade. Let me throw that out there. In the arcade.
Okay, in the arcade maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
the console version was not good. But there's just like so much unnecessary like potty humor in that movie that's just like not funny, and it's kind of weird that it's in there because it's not in any of the other Star Wars stuff. And then obviously Jar Jar's annoying. But then I realized also watching that film, even though it has a couple of great lightsaber battles, it really only has like 2 battle scenes in the entire movie. Most of that movie is a lot of just like slow boredom, dull scenes. And
Oh, that movie is so wizard.
I don't even know what the hell that means.
It's in there somewhere. Didn't like Anakin say that somewhere? So
I don't know. I think Watto should have like killed him and saved the galaxy some time.
yeah.
But yeah.
I actually, if you want to watch Episode 1 and you want it to be better, I don't know how easy it is to find anymore, but I would recommend trying to find Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Edit. It's some guy pretty much, cut it and edited it such that lots of the Jar Jar stuff is out, the pod racing scene is trimmed down, and a lot of the Senate talks and stuff, they're kind of edited out in certain ways, and I thought it was a lot more coherent and a lot better and less annoying, certainly. So yeah, try and find that.
You love Jar Jar.
Hmm.
You love Jar Jar. You want to say that you love Jar Jar.
Oh, those Jedi mind tricks won't work on me.
Are you a Toydarian?
I mean, probably in like 20 years I'll look like one, but
Your mind tricks do not work on me, Qui-Gon. Yeah, alright, so I'll tell you what, I'm going to just dole out some advice for today. I mentioned at the top of the show, I ranted about the whole issues that I was having with my PSN account. I'm going to just encourage everyone right now, because Sony actually does not by default make you set up the fullest level of security measures that you could. So if you do have a credit card tied to your account, I would just recommend that you go and enable every possible thing. And in addition to having a good password, also you can set up a 5-digit PIN. So I would do that. You can turn on the option to require that stuff to be put in before you can purchase anything each time, instead of just having it like automatically download. Go turn those things on. You might think that they're like kind of a hassle, but at the end of the day, they'll be totally worth it. And you might think it's not going to happen to you because it never has. I certainly knew it was within the realm of possibility, and not, with all the news every day about cyber attacks, I'm not that naive, but man, I don't know if that stuff would have prevented what happened to me from happening, but I would just encourage everyone, take 5 minutes, go turn all that stuff onto the strictest setting possible, and just save yourself some potential headache in the future. So you guys have any parting advice or words for the folks before we say our farewells this week?
If you're planning outdoor activities and you buy train or bus tickets or whatever to travel, halfway across the country to do so, check the weather to make sure that it'll be possible to accomplish your goals when you get there.
Yeah, although to be fair, the weather seems like they're only right about the forecast about half the time anyway. So
they're only right whenever.
I would actually like to do an experiment where you replace a meteorologist who's been to college and studied meteorology with just a random guy off the street who's good at talking on camera and see if anyone ever actually notices.
Or what you do is get one of those old people from the country that feels it in their bones.
Oh, my hip's feeling a little rough today. That means the storms are coming.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I want to just thank everybody for listening this week and for all of you who've been giving us feedback and downloading the show. We really appreciate it. You can continue to give us feedback, send us questions and comments to worldmapcast@gmail.com. And you can listen to the show live here each week on the Google Hangout on air. We go live pretty much every Sunday afternoon around 3 o'clock. We're a little later this holiday weekend. Go to YouTube, look up the World Mapcast podcast, and like, subscribe, comment, give us feedback there. We're also on iTunes, obviously. I think is where most people download, listen to their podcasts, and you can go subscribe to the podcast there. Be sure to take a minute and just give us a 5-star review. If you don't feel like reviewing the show, that's just fine. You can write about cats and dogs and meat and whatever you want to write about in the review, and we'll just take it. Hey, 5 stars is 5 stars. We're also on Stitcher and other platforms if you don't have iTunes. And most importantly, just tell some friends about the show. It really helps us out if you could go and tell someone about how much you like the World Map podcast and just get one other person to download it, and it'd be a big help for us. So where can you find us? Well, I mentioned you can send us feedback and questions to worldmapcast@gmail.com. You can also visit worldmapcast.com, which now includes all of our PlayStation 4, PSN, Steam. All of our player IDs are now on the About page there on worldmapcast.com. So if you want to find us online and give us a friend request to play online, you can do that. We're also at World Mapcast on Twitter, and we're on Facebook at facebook.com/worldmapcast. Go give us a like over there. Have some conversations with us. And thanks again for listening. Until next time, we are poppin' smoke.